When people think of Paul McCartney, they see the warm smile, the gentle voice behind Hey Jude, and the calm Beatle who always seemed to rise above drama. Yet behind that image stands a man shaped by betrayal, disappointment, and wounds that never fully healed. And the truth is that Paul's biggest struggles were not with fame or music, but with the people who broke his trust and left. Him carrying emotions he rarely speaks about. John Lennon was once Paul's closest friend, a partner who helped him craft more than 200 songs that changed the world. But by the mid-1960s, their bond began to weaken. John felt trapped by the clean image surrounding Paul, while Paul grew tired of John's chaos and Yoko Ono's constant presence. And after their manager Brian Epstein died, the band slid into confusion. Paul tried to save the group while John wanted to escape. And in the studio, Paul's obsession with perfection clashed with John's desire for freedom until everything finally collapsed. And when Paul sued to dissolve their company, John saw it as the final betrayal, firing back with the brutal song How Do You Sleep, where he mocked Paul by saying the only thing you've done was yesterday. And before they could repair their friendship, John was murdered in 1980, leaving Paul with words that came far too late. Michael Jackson entered Paul's life in the early 1980s as a genuine friend. And during their conversations, Paul shared one important lesson. Real power in the music industry came from owning publishing rights. But what Paul offered as friendly advice, Michael saw as opportunity. And in 1985, when the ATV catalog containing most Beatles songs went up for sale, Jackson bought it for $47.5 million. Shocking Paul and leaving him feeling betrayed because his own friend had taken control of his legacy using the knowledge Paul had given him, and their friendship quietly died from that moment on. Yoko Ono was another source of tension, because before she entered the picture, the recording studio had always been a private place for the four Beatles. But Yoko's constant presence disrupted the group's careful balance, and Paul felt her comments during sessions created division. And although he said he never blamed her for loving John, he openly admitted he hated the way the atmosphere changed. And after John's death, the conflict grew when Paul wanted songwriting credits adjusted on songs he had mostly written, like Yesterday, while Yoko refused and even dismissed Paul's solo work as light entertainment, later ranking him as the least important Beatle in a public poll, a remark that cut deeply. Alan Klein caused damage on an entirely different level, because after Brian Epstein's death, the Beatles were desperate for guidance, and Klein stepped in with big promises. Paul sensed danger immediately and refused to trust him, but John, George, and Ringo signed with him anyway. And by 1970, Paul felt he had no choice but to sue the others just to escape Klein's control. The world labeled him the villain who broke up the Beatles, but years later, Klein was exposed for fraud and forced to repay large sums, proving Paul had been right all along. Phil Spector delivered the final blow when Klein hired him to rework the Let It Be recordings without Paul's approval. And Spector transformed the long and winding road from a quiet ballad into a dramatic production packed with strings and choirs, leaving Paul furious and ignored until decades later when he finally released Let It Be Naked, restoring the song to the simple emotional form he intended. Paul McCartney stays silent about these betrayals because he knows that speaking openly would shatter the ideal image the world holds of him, and his silence is not weakness. It is his way of surviving, protecting his heart and moving forward, without letting bitterness control him. For more untold stories behind music's biggest legends, subscribe to Hollywood Bulletin and hit the bell icon to never miss an update.